Welcome back to the History of Awesome. This is 1991 edition. I'm Damon Hatfield. I'll be your host this time out. I'm joined by Justin Davis, Megan Sullivan,
Hello.
Mitch Dyer.
Yeah.
Lady and gentlemen, the Super Nintendo was released in August of 1991 here in North America.
Oh my goodness gracious.
What a year.
What a year.
What a machine.
The crazy thing about the SNES is that that's 2 years after the Genesis.
The Genesis had 2
Wow,
years
really?
all to
Yeah.
itself, 89. Yeah.
I never knew that in my entire life until this moment.
I'm glad you're on this panel.
I'm educated about video games.
No, I mean, most consoles famously don't have very great launch games. Or that's kind of the case now. They launch
Sure.
and build up steam over
and it's
time.
been
but
that way for a while.
The SNES launched like really strong, right?
It had Super Mario World packed in with it, one of the greatest games of all time.
Game over.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
really all you need, but they have more than that.
Yeah.
even.
The launch games were Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, SimCity, and Gradius 3.
It's great.
Good
It's an
Lord.
incredible lineup,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You should probably start with Mario World.
Of course.
I mean, the eternal, if you're watching History of Awesome a couple weeks ago, we did 1989, I think, or 90, which is Mario 3. Anyway,
90
Mario
is
3 was
Mario
on our
3.
previous episode.
Yep.
And those are the two games that always get put side by side. I'm more of a Mario World guy.
I am
myself.
also a Mario World.
Mario
guy.
World was my crack back in the day. I could not stop playing that game. I put so many hours into that
Yeah.
game. Like, I won it, and then I'd immediately start over.
It was one of those games that when you saw it, you're like, how do video games ever look better than this?
Not just
Yeah.
better, but it had a dinosaur of multicolors.
Ride
It
a
had a
dinosaur.
cape. You could fly with
Eat
the
some
dinosaur.
apples.
No kidding.
Get some fruit in there. God, the level design of that game was so thoughtful.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I love Mario 3 for many, many reasons, and but Mario World is just so much, just moving platforms and spinning things. It was more complex and more alive, and you just had to be more aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
I loved navigating that world.
And it showcased what, like, the new tricks the Super Nintendo was capable of. Like, Mario could rotate on the fences into the background. There was,
Oh my
like,
gosh.
fog floating in front of him. You're like, oh.
Yeah. I actually really I feel like Super Mario World is that perfect combination of like twitchy platforming, like you need to obviously get all your jumps right, time all that right, but also exploration and secrets and puzzle solving. And I discovered, this is pre-internet, and I discovered like Star Road on my own. And I was like, what? I thought I like
was
found
blown.
something
Nobody
that
will ever believe me.
no one's ever seen this. I'm like, but it's cool. You see this like keyhole, and you're like, what the hell is that? And then at a different level, you find a key, and then you're like, well, what the hell is that? And then finally, you figure out that the keys fit in the keyholes, and there's secret exits. And then you figure out that there's secret exits everywhere. Like half the levels in the game have secret
Yep.
exits, and they all lead to this whole world of secret levels. They have this crazy music, and like. That's mind-blowing. Like, that was incredible. And, like, the puzzle of getting out of the forest. So, to me, it was that perfect combination of, exploring each level and the secrets of each level, and also, still sort of the perfect platforming that Mario's always had.
Yeah, plus it had Bonsai Bill, which was pretty darn amazing. When I saw that thing coming at me in the very first level, that's not Bullet Bill. That is a ginormous bullet coming at you in the first 30 seconds of the game. And I remember, like, that's the moment I was like, this game is going to blow my mind. And I hadn't gotten Yoshi at that point, which was even better because you can ride a dinosaur in the game.
Yeah, and you gotta leave them behind at certain points.
Aw.
Yeah, but if you left him behind, you could jump higher up.
Yeah, you
which
could
was
jump higher up. That's
true.
also how you
super
get to one
terrible
the
of you,
secret
but it
exits.
worked.
So the NES and the Master System both had D-pad and 2 face buttons. The Genesis added a 3rd face button, but then the Super Nintendo was like, we're gonna have 4 face buttons and 2
two
shoulder
triggers.
buttons.
Yes.
Those triggers
So
are a
good.
big deal. I don't know, like there might be some weird example from video game history that did it before. So I'm always hesitant to say it's the first time you
Sure,
ever
yeah.
saw that. But to my knowledge, that's the first examples of using index figures for triggers on top of a controller. Obviously became the standard. Really smart. It gave you an option to just press multiple buttons at once. Like you only have one thumb pressing buttons. So now it really opened up a world of like control options.
It's also the standard, like the gold standard for every controller today, right? Like even the Xbox One controller is ABXY.
Yeah.
In that cross layout.
Yeah, that cross layout definitely won out over 3 buttons side by side
Yeah.
for sure. Although it made certain stuff like Street Fighter way harder.
Yeah.
But the Super Nintendo was sort of what started giving Nintendo its for kids image, because they would do things like censor Mortal Kombat 1, the Genesis didn't. That
Yep.
sort of gave Sega the opportunity to market its console in a different way.
Well, it did what Nintendo don't,
Yeah,
David.
it's true. I've heard
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it kicked off the console wars, kicked
Yeah.
them into high gear.
That was a really big deal back in the day. Like, it's still a big deal today.
Was everybody here a Super Nintendo kid?
Yes.
No, I was actually
I-
a Genesis kid.
Wow. Okay.
I had
Wow.
both.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, I ended up with both, but growing up, I had a Genesis, and so my Super Nintendo experience was actually fantastic. I played at a friend's house, and I borrowed a Super Metroid, and that's how I got exposed to that game. But I didn't own a Genesis Super Nintendo until years later. I think it was maybe the year the PS1 came out, I picked up a SNES on the cheap in like 95 or 96. And so I got to have that classic experience where it's like, I'm getting Link to the Past, I'm getting F-Zero, I'm getting Mario World, and it's like just this smorgasbord Final Fantasy VI, like all these games, Chrono Trigger. I managed to get them, Super Metroid, all at once in like one summer because they were all cheap and the console was cheap. And like that's the way to do it. Like if you don't have to have the newest best thing, wait and you get to experience it all at once.
It was such an insane console too. I mean, the library for the Super Nintendo is among the best in history. Arguably, I think you could make the case that it is the best console.
I'd also make the argument that that's where SquareSoft became king of
JRPGs
JRPGs because you had Final Fantasy IV, 6, Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger. I think Secret of Evermore they also did. I mean, it's huge.
I would say overall, the SNES library maybe is the greatest games library.
Donkey Kong Country, my favorite game of all time, ActRaiser, Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball.
What was so good about Ken Griffey Jr.?
It was so it was just regular baseball, like top-down sort of baseball, but you could rename all your players. Like you could call them F Mulder and D Scully, and you could when you went to catch a ball in the outfield and you were like, oh, I'm gonna get it, and you ran too far and you ran into a wall. Animation was great. You just smashed into a wall, the guy fell over. Super cute. Game was super fun.
Man, that's all about Super Tecmo Bowl. Or Tecmo Super Bowl. I said it backwards.
Yeah.
Tecmo
So we'll talk about Tecmo Super Bowl
Yeah, we
a
will.
little bit.
Yeah,
did we mention Link to the Past already?
No. I mean, I've mentioned it
Briefly,
passively.
yeah.
Some people's favorite Zelda game of all time.
Yeah, it's a totally respectable pick. I was always you mentioned that F-Zero is one of the launch games for that console.
Yeah.
Really a technical showcase for the Mode 7 graphics. Pseudo 3D effect in that game. Great. I mean, F-Zero is really playable. Like, you never know with a game like that. Like, is it gonna feel clunky or is it gonna feel good if you go back and play it today? And F-Zero still totally feels great. Really playable.
Super Nintendo is what gave us Super Mario Kart. That was the beginning of that franchise.
Yep. Mario RPG.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Much later, Mario RPG came out the same year as Mario 64.
No kidding. That is really cool.
Maybe. I think that's true. I said that so definitively. They might be.
Justin Davis.
They may have been in separate calendar years, but they were very close together.
Okay.
I really liked the Super Game Boy the accessory for the Super Nintendo.
Oh man, I totally forgot about that. That was
Yeah.
how my dad and I used to play a lot of Super Nintendo together, but he had a Game Boy and I had a Game Boy and we would just trade cartridges, but being able to play on the TV, play those games together was amazing.
Yeah.
Play some Cosmo Tank.
Like, the Game Boy was awesome, but it's hard to argue against the screen. Some games were hard to see, like it would get really blurry.
There'd be
and then
ghosting
and then on the Super Game Boy, that fixed that problem.
Play Mario Land on your TV with your controller. Perfect.
So you could change the color, so you'd have like a red hue or green hue or blue hue. But weren't some games like Super Game Boy enabled, and they would actually have like pseudo color?
Like Donkey Kong and the Link's
Fa-
Awakening were like made
Yeah, like different grays allowed them to have different kind of
They would have
almost
a-
texture looks.
Well, no, I
They'd
thought
have a unique border around them, and then some of them could be in more colors.
That's right.
Donkey Kong 94 is the one that I really remember. If you play it with a Super Game Boy, it actually is almost like a SNES game.
Yeah.
I didn't remember Link's Awakening. It might be the Game Boy Color version of that game. With
DX?
the Color Dungeon. I don't recall the specifics.
In any case, the Super Nintendo, despite having a late start and despite fierce competition from the Genesis, would go on to be the best-selling console of the 16-bit generation.
In the end, it was like the tortoise.
Yeah,
It's slow and steady.
Fun fact, in South Korea, the Super Nintendo was called Super Comboy.
Nice.
Sure.
Moving on, in 1991, Civilization was released that year, the first Civilization.
Yeah, Sid Meier. The thing about Civ 1 is that if you were to go back and play that game today, it's clunky, right? It's a 1991 PC game. It's very, very hard to.
I'm sure it's very rudimentary compared to what you expect from a Civilization game by now.
But what's surprising about it is how much of still it's 2015. How much of Civ is there in Civ 1? It's you start the world is completely unsettled. It's wide open, and then cities start popping up everywhere, and a city plopping a city on the map as your way to claim that territory as your own, and. Sort of the tech tree that sits above, you have these multiple layers of strategy. You have the military game that you're playing against other people, and you have sort of the economic game that you're playing against the computer. And then above that is the tech that's sort of advancing.
The scientific.
Yeah, and all that's there in Civ 1 in 1991.
It's so great.
Incredible.
It's a game about imperial domination that doesn't require violence. You can like you said, you could take that social political science route to become the better civilization and win that way.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
One of the first 4X games. It's not literally the first, but it wasn't. It was a strategy game that wasn't just all about military conquest, as you say. Completely viable to play non-violently. It's awesome.
Explain what 4X means.
The X's are what? Explore, exterminate, expand.
Exploit, exploit, exterminate.
And so that's basically, it was a term coined by a game journalist later in the 90s. But that's basically what it means. It's a shorthand for these games where like you can win in a way other than, you need to consider your economy and your culture and things other than just your military.
And this is a genre that's still strong today.
What I like about Civ, Civ 1 and all the rest of the Civ games is that turn-based nature of them means that you're always like so close to like, if I just play one more turn, I'm gonna complete, you know, my pottery tech.
Yep.
And in one more turn, this city's gonna upgrade.
It's only 20 more turns until my notable
Yeah.
monument is done. I should just finish that one and then I'll go to bed.
And then it wasn't Civ 1. The first one that I got really into was Civ 3, I think. And it was one of the very first games that like made me literally lose track of time. I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it is the middle of the night, and I just like I'd never experienced that before. Like
Yeah.
even games that I really
It's a
liked.
weird feeling.
Yeah.
Civ 4 did that to me. You know,
Yeah.
you're playing a game and you think, it's fine, I've only played for a little bit, and you look out and it is literally dawn.
Yeah. Yep. It's because you're always one turn away from something awesome happening.